Hello and welcome to Feedback for the week of January 4th, 2010. We're in the tens. Yay! We're out of the aughts into the tens and then the tweens.
What is it? Teens?
I guess. It'll be the teens. It's just me awkward to say that for the next kind of, a couple of years.
Well, if it's the teens, it's going to be awkward for more than just that reason.
Yeah. That's, look at that. Adolescence. It's a good joke.
Out the gate.
Are you
Abby,
are you there, God? It's me, Adam. Other awkward things like that. Blubber. So
really
happy New Year to everybody.
Yay.
Happy New Year. We all had some vacation time. I assume some games were played, but to be honest, it was kind of nice to also have a break from things such as
I didn't play a single game over break.
Really?
I just shut my brain off and I didn't want to play any games.
Did you read a book?
Yes.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I played a lot of games.
I read American Gods by Neil Gaiman.
Ooh,
Excellent book.
I really do like that book. I picked one up called Chronic City.
Well, there you go.
It has marijuana in it. Can you believe it?
Ooh.
Not inside the book, but
It's in the hardcover edition.
Yeah,
But once you
it's
cut out that
like
little
that
second-
old Cosby Show episode where the kid had hidden the joints, had the textbook, and Mr. Huxtable had to give the talking to in that very kind sweater-wearing way. Of course, we are joined by Patrick Klepek, Abby Hebby, and Sterling McGarvey. You guys, you didn't mention anything magical about your vacations?
I played a lot of games. My brother and I raided Steam during the holiday sale, and I played Steam games pretty much the entire time I was back. I played Deus Ex. I started it, didn't get to finish. I played Spirit Tracks. I played Lego Rock Band. I played Assassin's Creed. I played like everything over the break.
Good for you.
Bayonetta. It was good.
Sterling, were you a reader or a player?
I did a bit of both.
Look at that.
Borrowing a friend's copy of The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan, thinking about
Great book.
how I eat, and also managed to knock out Platinum Trophy in Assassin's Creed 2 and get some time in on FIFA.
All right. Well,
I
bravo.
like that he never takes the stance in that book that he's making like a moral judgment about it. He just kind of is like, I eat meat, but here, let me tell you about things.
Yep.
It's a good book.
It's good British. All right. Patrick, let's start off with rarely do we get to see interesting news happen this early on in the year, but the cryptic folk over at Nintendo blessed us with something.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo works at their own pace, so take everything they say with a large grain of salt. But, Nintendo President Satoru Iwata was talking to a Japanese newspaper recently and made a couple of interesting comments. One, probably, most prominent out of the gate is that Zelda Wii will be coming this year. I guess we can say this year now, 2010.
Yeah, it is this year.
And it'd be kind of in back and forth on whether it was actually going to happen, but, it sounds like we might actually get Mario Galaxy this spring and then Zelda in the fall, which would be pretty impressive.
Now, in theory, we should also be seeing the Metroid game?
In theory.
Yeah, that's...
Can we get a spring, summer, fall?
At the end of this year, we'll get back together and see if that little trifecta of magic actually happened.
Yeah, again, grain of salt.
Yeah.
Make a pool.
Yeah, it's like...
I'd go in on it.
All right. But there was also another announcement they made that was actually more eyebrow-raising.
Yeah, they actually made, it seems like the first comments about the successor to the DS. Nintendo's made some brief comments about a Wii HD in the last couple of months, saying they want to embrace, more motion, and they don't see any reason not to do HD at this point with the Wii. But we haven't heard too much about the DS. We've only heard about the DS giant, DS super fat that they're bringing out, the XL or whatever. And now they've made comments about a DS that is higher resolution.
Right.
No crap. And then as a motion, the one that got everyone talking is that it will have a motion sensor at some point. And
I think it's fair to say that this is in a Japanese language newspaper.
So what? Yeah, what is being translated as motion sensor could be iPhone touch screen, could be accelerometer. It could also be Nintendo just throwing things out there.
Because, it's kind of... I don't think that we're under the impression that we're going to be waving a tiny little wand in front of a touch screen because... Well, that seems kind of silly. Let's be honest with that.
I hope
not. In terms of motion sensing, what is really possible with it that isn't being at least attempting to be accomplished right now on the DS?
I have no idea.
I think it's just a matter of what's built in. The technology's there. The DSi exists, so therefore you've got cameras. So the game could detect what you're doing, kind of like what Sony did with iToy. And the motion sensing, they had that little add-on, the thing for Metroid Pinball, like 4 years ago. So knowing how much Nintendo loves to recycle their old technology, I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something there. I guess the other thing is they so love to confuse everyone, but to their own financial advantage, and reiterate the DS like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, is this finally though the tipping point? I mean, can the market really handle also a new DS? Now, granted, this could be coming a couple years down the line. I mean, is it essential that they do that, or are they just doing just fine with the same technology, just with different packaging?
Yeah, I think they're doing just fine, but at the same time, if you look at what the DSi is doing, I think you're seeing the direction they're kind of playing with. Like with DSiWare, which they literally just ignore. Like, I mean, it sucks you can't access it on any other device, but even if you own a DSi, they do a really, really poor job. I see more mentions of that from Dylan Cuthbert at Q Games talking about it on Twitter than I see Nintendo mentioning anything about DSiWare. And I think that's a step towards, them looking at what's happening with, getting away from retail, being able to deliver things directly to you, because the DS has a huge piracy problem.
Yes.
And then the cameras are sort of a step in some sort of other motion direction, maybe. So I think the DSi, we haven't seen Nintendo announce any DSi exclusive games from them, I don't think, that aren't DSiWare. So until I see that, I'm more convinced this is an experiment towards what Iwata is talking about.
Yeah, and I also see them trying to find ways to help it work with Wii better. There was such a big tease. I think it was in Twilight Princess. Was that or Super Paper Mario? I'm gonna get confused now. But on the wall there was an image that looked like a DS. And I spent like an hour and a half with my DS out trying to think maybe if there was something that I could do to make that interact or work. I felt like very tricked, but I was wondering if maybe they wouldn't start to kind of not just being able to, like what they did with, I gotta remember that, it was it's like one of my favorite Xbox Live Arcade games, and then it went to Wii, and it was you shoot things.
World of Go?
No, but that's a great game.
That's coming to
Geometry
Wars? Yeah. But Geometry Wars, and you can have somebody playing on DS,
On
and
the
like
Wii
Guitar
version,
Hero, and like what Guitar Hero does, and you have the Brody,
I know what you're talking
and something maybe even past that. I mean, I always thought maybe it could be like it's like the secret Dakota ring of the Wii or something.
Maybe
I don't
they're all
know.
shy after the GameCube, Game Boy Advance fiasco
Oh,
of
maybe.
03.
Oh, come on. I love that one with the pots you had to carry around. Crystal Chronicles. Friends of, yeah.
Ooh, Crystal Bears, yeah.
Yeah. And then I believe there's also a Zelda game with pots.
Force Swords, yeah.
Yeah.
Pac-Man Versus was amusing.
But
just
now,
saying.
obviously, there is a potential competitor with the DS, and that is obviously the iPhone. And God forbid, if this tablet thing from Apple actually does happen, you have a very interesting potential for a portable gaming device. Is this all that Nintendo needs to do so that they can sort of keep pace with what is becoming like a massive platform, not just for games, but this kind of multi-use platform? Is there more that they need to do with their next generation of a handheld device?
I think, and this ties into, what we'll talk about a little bit later with CES, but one of the predictions that we're kind of making for CES is that, you're going to see kind of mobile applications start to not erode, but getting closer to where Nintendo and Sony and their handhelds need to start paying attention. I think the big difference between what you do with the DS and what you do with like an iPhone is a persistent data connection. So like having access to somewhere where you can buy things all the time is why I spend so much money on my iPhone. When I'm stuck in an airport, I can do it through 3G. Not relying on Wi-Fi is not practical. But if there was a new like Nintendo or Sony handheld that came with some sort of 3G data package, or it was built in, subsidized somehow, I think that's a big step for them getting really embracing digital distribution, because the idea that I have to sync my PSP, or like if I don't have if I have the ability to download all the time, I'm going to do it a lot more, because I'm going to find periods where I'm bored and sure, I'll buy something.
Well, just think about like, Verizon or Sprint, who thinks they're losing ground to AT&T because of the iPhone. If suddenly they got to, lock up the rights for having a 3G connection with the DS.
Exactly.
I mean, that would be very, very profitable.
What if you could go into Verizon store and get like a subsidized DS where you pay $40 for it, but you're paying for like a data connection over the year?
Wow. That is ominous. Now, quickly, we're going to read from our user, The Scientist. I can pronounce this one. I like that. Good news indeed, but for the DS successor using motion detection, that would seem kind of awkward, waving in front of a portable device.
And then again, like we said, we don't really know what they meant by that, or
But I mean, even if it is like kind of a greater level of motion detection where you just have to move the DS, it is kind of silly to do that.
I look ridiculous enough at the airport blowing into the microphone
Thank
while
you.
playing
Exactly.
Spirit Tracks.
Exactly.
I don't need to do anything else, because I mostly use my handheld, system in public.
Yes.
I don't really need to do anything else to make myself look more ridiculous.
Yes.
I own WarioWare for DSi. I already know awkward on a DS.
Yeah.
Also, this is more with relation to The Legend of Zelda. Looks like it will come in 2010. Grain of salt, pound of salt, maybe the entire Salton Sea dredge is what we need for some of these promises. But from our user, Valentinog, yes, finally a great year for the Wii. Tatsunoko versus Capcom, Mario Galaxy 2, and now New Zelda. Sweet. Once again, he only mentioned 3 games. For the entire year of 2010. It is, I mean, I think if they really can get that Metroid out, that is a trifecta. But if you look back to that wonderful year of the Nintendo GameCube, where we had Super Mario Sunshine, which at least at the time I thought was a good game. We also had Wind Waker, and we had, there was Animal Crossing.
Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
Metroid Prime. I mean.
Were those all the same year?
Yeah.
Those are all within
Yeah.
a 1 year span.
And then there was nothing.
Yeah.
And Nintendo has this real funny habit of just giving you everything you want. And they're like, all right, now we can do nothing for a couple
They go in
years.
spurts. Yeah, you get a ton of stuff. I mean, really, maybe it wouldn't be uncharacteristic after last year's sort of drought that we would get, a bunch of stuff at once and then just get ready for 2 more years of nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So just play those games very, very slowly.
Totally.
Well, it's not just that. It's when you get a misfire. Like, case in point, you look at like a year following each holiday season, you had Mario Sunshine, Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, and then the next year you got Double Dash. It was like, it's Mario Kart.
Yeah. Well, except it's still sold like things that sell a lot. That's how much it sold. Our second story, not as eyebrow raising, but still interesting enough.
Well, yeah, BioWare announced the first real, they're calling it an expansion. It's a different terminology. It's not downloadable content, although you can download it digitally. It's called Dragon Age Awakening, and it's their first major content expansion for Dragon Age Origins. It takes place after Dragon Age Origins. You can buy it at retail, or you can buy it digitally, but it's going to cost $39.99.
Wow.
Which is by far the most expensive piece of DLC released as a single piece of content so far.
Well,
And
what are you getting with it? I mean, is there something there that can at least partially justify such a high price?
It's hard to say right now because we don't know too much about it, but they've said it's a new area, new characters, new weapons. You can respec your character if you want or start a new one, so you can kind of reboot if you wanted to. And then the rumor is supposedly around 15 hours of gameplay, which if you add up what you pay for, multiple Fallout expansions, which were like, 4 to 6 hours, depending on which one you were playing, the $40 isn't totally out of line if you start adding it together, but it's a lot to pay at once. And that's sort of the appeal of DLC is you're paying in chunks for what you want, not $40 for something. And I think people are rightfully a little upset in that, it's based on an existing game. It's not a sequel. There's not going to be a whole lot of iteration on the gameplay. It's just kind of more of what you got before, more of what you liked. So,
well, I think the thing that's going to put me off even more to this, because I've quite enjoyed Dragon Age. I find the game ridiculously challenging at certain points. But there is that additional content that you already can get. And, there's characters in the game like, oh, look, if you come to me, I'll make you want to buy something. Do you know how hard it is on the PC to buy this content? I mean, it's like you have to go through all these various hoops, both with Steam, setting up an account with BioWare. I mean, the joy, and I imagine this is how it works on the Xbox 360. The joy of buying things on my Xbox is that without thinking, I've spent a fair amount of money. Well, and it's that ease of use. I've never seen anything so onerous as what they have.
I think that's actually been happening a lot more in the past. I know Konami had one where you were registering for it. There's certain EA games. I mean, Assassin's Creed has Uplay now. And that's another little, although that's in-game, which is
that
really
obnoxious overlay that comes up when you unlock something through Uplay.
Yeah.
But, but at least you can sign up for that one, like right there while you're at it. But I think that's a kind of new trend, and I don't know if it's the individual companies just trying to track, who's using their product and how, but I've seen a lot of it, and I hate it. Like, the less things that I have to sign up for or do, the happier I am.
It's so counterintuitive. I mean, as you were just saying earlier about, how quickly and easily you buy things on your iPhone, any delay you're allowing the consumer, you're losing, some consumers. That you want to make it as painless and as quick before you have a second thought to go like, oh, I don't really need that. Every time I'm buying it for Dragon Age, I'm like, oh, I don't need that.
I'm that person because, every time I think about how many things that you have to sign up for or create a password for in an average year, I can't remember any of them anymore. If I don't have like one password, anyone that requires me to do like, well, 6 and 1 has to be a capital and then you have to have a symbol, I'm never going back.
Yeah, that one I really don't like.
It seems like game publishers are taking the worst element of an industry trend. It's like they all said, Nintendo made friends codes for the Wii. How can we come up with something possibly more onerous and terrible than that?
Yeah, it's anyway. I'm not saying that that the content's not going to be good, but I just think that they need to find a more streamlined way to allow people to have access to the content because Dragon Age Origins, while it was somewhat under the radar, given some of the other games that are coming out around it, has sold quite well for EA.
It did well considering that we all had sort of tempered expectations about how it did, and I think in its first month it sold something 300,000 copies on a console, and that's impressive for like a fantasy setting epic game that everyone kind of wanted Mass Effect instead.
We're going to read a comment from our user Coderead. Coderead? Okay.
Coderead?
He's saying the Throne of Ball expansion for Baldur's Gate 2 was basically a whole new game, so I will buy this without hesitation.
You do it.
Throne of Ball was great. I'm a little bit confused
it's a
on
different
the
era
logic.
now.
I mean, just because I dated someone 15 years ago doesn't mean I want to take a cookie from them now because they could have gone crazy and poisoned me.
Do people offer you cookies a lot?
You know what? There are times when people have offered me cookies. Just point of fact. I learned this in San Francisco. I didn't learn this by experience. I watched this happen to a friend. If someone is at a bar that's a friend of yours and happens to have cookies in his pocket, be wary of what might be in the cookie.
Fair
people
enough.
just don't carry cookies in their pocket in bars at 10 p.m. All I'm saying, just a pro tip. Okay, moving on to news story number 3.
So CES is coming up this week, and we've got people from Attack of the Show going, and me and Brian Leahy on the G4 side are going, and we're going to be covering CES, which used to be back in the 90s was E3 for games until E3 was created.
And this is where the original PlayStation was announced, was at CES.
Yeah, and this is this is where Project Reality, which became Ultra 64, which became Nintendo 64, like a lot, and like Star Fox was shown for the first time. Star Fox 2 was also shown at CES 95 before it was just kind of tossed in the trash. And so CES does have a long history with games, but these days it's more some scattered games and then also just noticing the technology that's going to be influencing games. So we made 3 predictions of trends we were going to see, and I'll run through them really quickly. One was, in a post-Avatar world, 3D is the next big thing, or at least they're going to tell you it is. The way you interact with games is changing. You're talking about motion, physicality, tablets, like the way you interact with your devices is changing. And then also, mobile advancement begins eyeing the DS and the PSP, which we talked about earlier with the iPhone. And so I know that, you saw Avatar, and you weren't a big fan of the 3D effect.
Yes, and most everything else about the movie as well.
Me too.
Let's concentrate. Let's attempt to concentrate on the 3D part.
Yeah, I didn't see it enhancing the experience. Actually, for me personally, I felt completely distanced from the movie, and I was competing with it, I think, for at least the first half hour to 45 minutes, trying to get my eyes to adjust. I began to think there's something wrong with my glasses. Then I thought there's something wrong with the seat that I had. Then I thought I was having macular degeneration and began actually having anxiety
attacks. Breakdown in the theater,
Yes.
didn't you?
And then Adam just started crying.
I was just kind of like, I'd rather have seen this in 2D. Adam's like going full scale. Like,
You don't even want to know what happened when I saw Memento. I was like, I've made bad decisions in my life. But I think the thing is that I don't think it enhanced the movie, and I think that the one thing is it stood so far out from the movie that we're finally at a point in time with video games where they're being made so well and the level of sort of finesse is being given to them that if we suddenly throw on, like, when something you could have accelerated graphics, all that mattered was graphics, and people were buying games, all due respect to Cliffy B, like Unreal, because it looked so good, even though there was a lot of better work that should have happened for the gameplay that was lying underneath it, and that we're about to move into that same thing. It's the same problem that we had with the Wii with the motion control at the beginning, where we had this really neat technology of which probably one game was really taking advantage of, and everything else was kind of people trying to just fumble in the dark, trying to understand what to do with it, and it concerns me with all of these 3D TVs that everyone's covering, that this is the new direction we're going in, that we're allowing the bells and whistles to actually lead the content when we're selling in an era where the content's quite good.
See, I think we'll end up seeing CS as lots of 3D pitches, but really you're asking consumers, you have to purchase a whole new TV to experience this.
It's a very expensive
in addition
TV as well.
to getting the glasses or the goggles or whatever. That's a separate purchase that doesn't come with your TV. These don't come with, if you buy Avatar the game, it doesn't come with the glasses. Like
some of the TVs do actually come with glasses, but
you're
that
paying
covers one person.
Yeah.
So if there's more than one person in your household,
It's 5 years before these are the TVs that you're going to see, on sale at Walmart, which is where you're starting to see the mass adoption, the slowed mass adoption of HDTV. So I think it's erroneous to adopt 3D, especially for games where I've seen Avatar the game in 3D, and it was neat, it created depth, but I didn't want to play 14 hours of that.
For me, it doesn't create immersion. Immersion isn't necessarily through the visuals; it's through the controls and that innate way you start interacting with it. And excuse me, guys. That's what immersiveness is. It's not, oh, look, I can see 3 layers of depth.
Well, that's why I think games went 3D like a couple years ago when they introduced the Wii. Like games version of 3D is motion, is physical interaction.
When it doesn't stop at the screen, it goes all the way.
It's
That's
not
a
the
very, very
screen.
good point.
I think it is. You're getting beyond just the controller you're holding in your hand. If it's rumble, if it's motion censoring, if it's an accelerometer, I think that's games version of 3D, and just sort of force feeding the visual part. A, I don't think it'll be adopted, and B, I don't think it'll serve the medium very well.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention you have one, regardless of whether you like it or not, Avatar is very successful, and you kind of you've right now, so you have one successful thing. I like going to see movies in 3D mostly because it's a gimmick, it's a novel.
I love the horror movies in 3D because the gimmick part is why it's so much fun. I want a hatchet coming at my eyeball.
But honestly, I kind of like the parts where it's not jumping out in your face. But I'm still looking at it as if it's a curiosity. It doesn't necessarily make it better or worse. It's just another way to look at it.
I mean, the original 3D was a gimmick.
Yeah.
And I think we still have yet to see how it's going to really sort of give a material impact in terms of the experience of what you're watching. I want to read a quick comment from EelRick64. Hope it's actually based on like eel, like in a river. I don't think 3D television is going to be the next revolution. The average American household just spent thousands of dollars to upgrade to plasma and LCD and now LED television sets. The economy is not strong enough to support people buying new 3D televisions that will no doubt cost probably $4,000 to $5,000 to purchase. I think he is exactly right.
Biggest problem.
Completely agree.
And it's a matter of the technology catching up with the, I remember when my dad first was like, DVDs are going to be the next big thing, and I'm like, hell are you talking about? I haven't even really heard about this, and he was right and everything, but it's like 3D is this combination of gimmick and I don't know if it doesn't actually really solve a problem for us or necessarily.
It seems to create a problem.
It's not a problem consumers had. It's a problem the movie industry had and created something to get you to go to the theater, which works for Avatar, but people aren't. If every movie goes 3D, then people are going to stop going to the movies because the tickets cost too much, and then the ticket prices come down for 3D, thus eliminating the whole reason.
We get an
3D in the
added
first
benefit
place.
for buying Blu-ray. Everything it does. It looks better. But 3D, unless you really buy into the whole 3D craze, there's no real reason to have it.
See, it's interesting to me because I feel like every CES, there is something that years down the line you really do see. Like the last time I covered CES was 3 years ago, and at that point they were saying, 1080p is the future. 1080p is the future. And finally, this last holiday season, you could go into Walmart and get an awesome 1080p TV for under $1,000.
Yeah.
Like the ripple effects are so vast, I don't think that 3D TVs are what the big thing at CES is outside of gaming. It seems like a lot of
maybe
the stuff that
10
I'm
years
seeing,
from now, like eventually we will all own 3D capable TVs, but that's when you get around to buying another one, and then it's going to be an accident. Like if I buy a new TV and it's 3D equipped, great, but if I can get a bigger TV that's the same price that's not 3D equipped, like I'm going to get the bigger TV.
See, it's interesting because I feel like what's really happening behind the scenes, it's not 3D TV. That's like the electronics entertainment industry trying to figure out some way to attract people to CES. It's devices doing the same thing that our 360 can do now, that our PS3 can do now. Media streaming. That's what they're trying to push, is all the media streaming, consumer stuff. And that's going to be the really big thing out of CES, but I think for gamers, that's not as relevant. We've got our consoles to do it.
I think it's worth pointing out that the other two things that you're predicting for CES really show the rest of the industry catching up to what has already been well established by the video game industry.
Yeah, sure.
And I think I don't want to speak for all developers out there, but I think that they are not they're just trying to get motion control, on these other two platforms. I don't think that they want to take on something like this. I mean, just think about like the poor testers. If you have bad 3D, their eyes all googly like they're a Muppet. They've just been like shaking.
You wear glasses
it's a
every
health
day.
hazard.
You have the 2 double glasses.
Which brings us to Achilles77, our viewer. 3D, when that means holographic, I will get it. I'm not wearing glasses to play a game.
Agreed.
See, I'm with him too. Like I don't really trust 3D unless I don't have to wear something. Once we get to the point where it jumps out of the screen, sure, why not? But
once it's Videodrome and I'm making out with my TV and I look like James Woods, that'll be one hell of a time. Yeah, Sean Young coming over, knocking on my door. Anyway, yeah, that'll be the era that I'll say, okay, fine, 3D is fine. But thank you so much for these news. I think we're going to... It's be interesting to talk to you next week when you get back from CES to see what the real take is from people on the street as far as this 3D TV is going. All right, let's talk about our Gamer of the Week. It is the first week of January, and I think at least for two-thirds of these panel, a game that people really, really seem to like, that's way out of the typical league of what we expect for something this early in the year. And that game is Bayonetta. This is obviously, I think, the final game of the first round of games out of Platinum Games.
Has the DS one come out
there's
yet?
one more.
Infinite
Space. That's right. There is a DS game. Anyway, this is from the maker of Devil May Cry. Very similar to Devil May Cry, but it's they sort of ratchet up. Obviously, Sterling, you did the review, so kind of give us the skinny on Bayonetta.
So Abby and I were back and forth about this because I feel like it's too easy to say, oh, it's Devil May Cry with like a female protagonist running around doing this stuff. There's much more to it. I think it's kind of a spiritual successor to a lot of what I think you pointed this out, what Devil May Cry 2 should have been.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a lot of friends who I think conceptually really enjoy Devil May Cry, but when it comes to actually playing the game, maybe don't enjoy it as much. And I really think that Bayonetta kind of hits on all of the misses of the Devil May Cry series and does a really good job kind of taking all maybe the constructive criticism that people have given about the game and making it into something that is fun and accessible, but also, there's complexity to the combat in it. And I absolutely loved it.
As did I.
Now, the game itself, I mean, how similar is it to how it plays to Devil May Cry? Are we talking about fixed camera angles? I mean, what are sort of those major changes in terms of, the nature of the gameplay from that Devil May Cry series? Blah.
I think it's the evolution of the combat system. I think the combat is significantly tighter than nearly anything that's come before it. I would say it's probably best combat I've seen in the genre since probably the special edition of Devil May Cry 3, which is where they remixed it, rebalanced the difficulty, and made it accessible to more people. More so than Ninja Gaiden, where they basically said, you suck, here's a pink sash if you want to play it on easy. What they did is they made it broad enough that almost anybody can jump in and find something to enjoy out of it. And yet at the same time, if you're really into that sort of combo-based, one-upsmanship of like hitting your highest score, going back through, replaying it. I mean, to be honest, it does a fantastic job. If I were maybe 8 years younger and I was only buying a couple of games a year or something, and I didn't have a backlog, I'd probably go back and play it 2 or 3 more times.
Oh, I plan on it. And what I like, I mean, in Devil May Cry 4, you saw them, you had the switching between weapon styles, and, if you ever figured out how to use that completely correctly, kudos. But they make it it's very simple in this when you're hitting the left trigger in order to switch between kind of your weapon loadouts. And it's seamless. It's really incredible, I think, what they've done. And your dodge is like this nice right trigger. Everything is very satisfying about how it controls.
Actually, and I want to appreciate what you just said about the Devil May Cry series, Abby. I've always found that to be a game I preferred in concept than in execution. And it sounds like this is also, as you said, much more accessible. I found that Devil May Cry was just way too steep, and that for the average gamer, it said, no, you can't play me. You've been sitting over there a little bit quiet, Patrick. Have you gotten some time with Bayonetta?
I up until the game's release, I've never found myself so dismissive of a game before I played it. Mostly because
I think that's true for almost all of us sitting at this table.
I didn't have any high hopes for it.
And not even because there's two subsets of this sort of like beat 'em up genre. You have like sort of the God of War path, and then the sort of Devil May Cries that are a little more fighting oriented. It's a lot more nuanced in terms of the button combos. You can bash through, but in order to really excel and look cool, you kind of have to know what you're doing. Unless you put it to the easier difficulties, which I did, but I'll get to that in a second. God of War, I can just sort of fumble through, and I still look like a total badass. Like not so much in Bayonetta, but the reason I was so dismissive of Bayonetta was because like the whole art aesthetic and the stylized nature of the sexualization of the character was so off-putting to me. And it's even more so in the game where there are just like blatant shots where she's just like opening her crotch or bending over and like making you imagine things. It's not funny. It just was sort of disturbing. And I kind of had to be drinking to get amused by it because otherwise I just got like really angry. but so I was like, okay, just try and look past that. And it was weird because like I love horror films, so I am used to a genre that is like exploitative of women. But something about Bayonetta just rubbed me the wrong way. So that came out weird.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that there were just tonal qualities to the game that overshadowed the gameplay. I mean, did you actually have a problem with the gameplay itself?
No, see, that's the thing. Like, I knew going into it that I wasn't going to be going to be able to appreciate the nuances of the game because I'd rather play God of War. I'd like that style of the game more. So I was one of those people. I put the game on easy automatic. So there are two different kinds of easy automatic. There's very easy, which you don't move and you don't do any of the basic
Is that the one-handed
combat.
play that we had heard about?
That's the one-handed play. Which probably services the cutscenes pretty well. And then there's the easy automatic, which you move around, you do the basic combat, but you don't have to do any of the advanced moves. Like, it just turns it into essentially a quick time sequence when you want to do any of the advanced stuff, like the torture attacks, and you don't have to set anything up. So I can sit and sort of enjoy the game on a very superficial level, and instead of playing it for 17 hours like Sterling did.
The torture attacks are quick time on normal.
But I don't like
anyway.
as soon as I encounter an enemy, it just says do a torture attack, and I just have to hit, I just have to hit B and A. It's like I will fight epic bosses, which I'm clear 20-minute battles, and I'm done with them 15
And you
seconds
just hit the
later.
I win button.
Yeah, and I'm totally okay with that, so I can enjoy the game on sort of a superficial level because I do like the ridiculousness of it. You know, the sexualism aside is awesome. Like, it is really fun and ridiculous, and it is. I can totally see why people love the hell out of the game because the combat is so flashy and there's clearly so much depth to it. It's just not my thing.
It's funny because I actually had to cut this out of the review, and it's weird because as I talk about how uncomfortable I felt playing as this character, the game's fundamentally porn. In the sense where it's literally something where they're, besides objectifying the heroine, the action drives the plot. The plot takes a complete backseat. I mean, it's to the point where, you know, it could be Fly Me to the Moon instead of that Bound Chicka Wow Wow, but I mean, it's like straightforward.
Yeah, because they play that song like 900 times in the game.
I want to talk about that one because it's so funny because the first time I heard the song in the game, I was like, Neon Genesis, Evangelion, what? And like, because that's the song that they play at the end of each episode. So, and I mean, and the series is all about the battle between angels and
Right.
you know, that's the main kind of enemy in the series and everything. And then you're taking a game that actually has a very similar theme to it. And it was like, I don't know if there's really supposed to be a link between the two, but I feel like they were watching that when they made the game.
Oh, absolutely. There's a scene in the game
there?
when she's riding down the freeway at the
Yes.
beginning where that music is playing in the background, and that's from Evangelion.
Yeah.
Which-
So they played as her theme throughout the entire
Yeah.
game. Yeah.
Now, just to be fair, it sounds like that everyone's kind of in unanimity that the story is not the strongest suit of the Bayonetta series.
It depends on what you
Fun.
mean by strongest suit. So now, is it like a good story? No, but is it like a pretty fantastic B movie, like ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous?
Yes.
Like, it wasn't written as
Okay.
though it's written like Camilla was like, yeah.
I mean, you
Well, no,
also
he
have to
was-
keep in mind
he-
that the
he-
voice acting and everything is
all purposely
pretty
bad.
terrible.
It's pretty
So, you know.
Now it sounds like a little bit like there is a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That there is stuff that we have
Absolutely.
mocked so much
Okay,
about
and that's
Japanese
why
games.
maybe all of the sexuality and the kind of the over the topness with that maybe didn't bother me. It's like I never felt like, okay, you know, obviously I'm female, but I never like, I wasn't uncomfortable. I wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe she's doing that because she's kind of like badass and just kind of like, I don't care.
She seems more masculine than Dante. I'll throw that out.
She is. and every time like the really over the top sexuality stuff. And I was playing at work a lot too, so there were other people around. We were laughing our asses off. I mean,
But maybe
it was
you
funny.
were alone,
And it felt very tongue in cheek.
I wasn't. I don't know. I mean, I also see that too. And eventually that's what I just accepted it as. I was just like, okay, I need to stop, you know.
It was more tongue in cheek than I've seen them
overanalyzing
do
this.
in a lot of other games. I mean, there's other games where it's just like, well, you know, tits for tits' sake.
Right.
And this one, it was at least like it feeds into her the kind of sexuality of her personality and a lot of the kind of like dialogue between her and the other characters, and it actually kind of made a lot of sense. And it was just funny. It like was the whole game was just kind of laughing at itself and was like, here's just the most ridiculous thing possible. Go enjoy yourself.
Which is interesting because if you look at some other Japanese games that seem designed for a Western audience, Dead Rising, and even like Metal Gear Solid 4, there seems to be more of a sense of self-irony in these games when they're made for the Western audience as opposed to the almost like stunning, naive seriousness that we get out of ones that seem more designed for the Japanese audience.
Well, it's also when you take into consideration, look at like what a lot of the Platinum Games guys worked on before they dissolved Clover. God Hand.
Yeah.
God Hand is like the Everest of weird ass Japanese
is.
action game. And so in that sense, even knowing that, there are still some moments in Bayonetta that were just kind of, I had to cringe. Like, they're funny, but it's just kind of like, haha. Like,
God, guys, relax.
Rodan,
Jeez.
the arms dealer, that thing where he's like, I got a bunch of halos once. I think I'm gonna go to space and become a space marine. Not so much.
That's good writing.
I actually kind of like that line.
I like it too.
What's the other one he does? He's just like, hey, listen to this one. Stop me if you heard this before. What are you buying? It's like,
Again,
yeah,
I kind of
get it.
like that one too.
As I played it, I was like, I get it.
That was
Sterling,
funny.
how about you revoice the game for
There
a
we
special
go.
reissue because you're selling me on it.
A
It'd be like
soundboard.
Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I was like, why is
I
Blade
wanna
selling
read-
me things?
I want to read a comment, not the entire one, from Ed Saber. Ed Saber.
Sure.
I love that. A normal person might just compare Bayonetta to Devil May Cry or Ninja Gaiden, but a true action gamer can feel the difference. No one does action like Hideki Kamiya. And
I
always
agree.
pronounce
I
his
mean,
name
that's what
wrong.
we were saying. The comparison to Devil May Cry is fairly obvious, but it's taking that and actually building something that's far better on top of it.
Obviously, what's plagued some of those games is the fixed perspective that was in Devil May Cry, and then, oh my god, in Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2, that camera that makes you want to just, buy somebody a camera.
The camera's pretty wonky in Bayonetta. Everyone, it's not totally bad, but there will be
not that
times
bad.
where
It's bad.
the camera gets stuck and you're clearly fighting over here, and then it it kind of.
But the character does move about as fast as I think I've seen a character.
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah.
no.
I kept watching the
Gaiden.
animation where she shifts into the panther form over and
yeah.
over. It was like, wow, that's nice.
That's really
Now,
cool.
there have been some reports that the PS3 version is decidedly less impactful, both graphically and with some load times. I'm just going to quickly read something from our reader, Pembo. Yet again, PS3 owners get an inferior product this far into the PS3's life. Both versions should be equal. It's just plain lazy. Sterling, has that been your experience with the PS3 version?
What I basically said, and I even got PMs about this on the site. People want to know, like, what's the really big difference? Buy it on 360. If you
Yeah.
have access to both consoles, buy it on 360. Don't worry about brand loyalty. Sony and Sega are not going to cry. Still selling. It's still selling for Sega no matter what. If you only have a PS3, there's no reason that you should not play Bayonetta. That's how I look at it. I mean, there's issues, but like the one thing that's always drives me nuts is when I hear people say like lazy devs. I'm not going to be the grand apologist for game development, but I don't know what the time frame was for porting this game over. I don't know how many weeks they had, how big their team was.
Platinum didn't do it.
Yeah, Platinum didn't do it.
Yeah.
It was a
Sega did
Sega
it.
internal team.
Which is
worked
very
on it.
common. I mean,
Yeah.
most games are built for one platform, and then it's another team
Yeah.
that takes it over and ports it to another
And
one.
I don't think it's as easy as people think it is. We're like, well, why don't they just make it on PS3 because it's more complex and port it over? We don't know what their framework is that's in place. Like I said, it's armchair.
I
game development.
won't call them lazy. I don't think that's an excuse
Yeah.
for it
I think
being
has-
a poor port
Yeah.
or at least an inferior port. But like you said, the game's still there. It's deal with a couple load times. You'll get.
Since
you'll
you're
get over
probably
it
not
once you
going to
play
have the
game.
two versions running side
Yeah.
by side, you won't know the difference.
That's
So
true.
Pretend you didn't
don't
hear
deny
this.
yourself the game. So that was Bayonetta. I want to get to a reader question of the week, and this is from Yami Karasu. That might actually be someone's name. That's
might not
a
actually-
rarity here after Boner Jam lasting
Hey.
just around 2000.
Boner Jam,
gonna
don't
mention
feel
that every
bad.
episode.
Your name is wonderful.
He or she writes, DLC and downloadable games, especially the niche titles, are changing the scope of what modern consoles and content can offer at the expense of resale capability. However, there remains a strong used game market. How do you guys see the future of games content progressing in terms of DRM and methods of acquisition? I know this is something that we've talked about before. Obviously, I really see the discless future not that far down the line.
Well, and the one thing I didn't quite understand this, but Steven Silva at Kotaku wrote a story about this week that the Kindle, you can actually return books once you've purchased them through the Kindle. Within 7 days, you can give it back, and they'll give you a refund.
Really?
And I think that's one of the things that this reader is hinting at is that, we all sort of understand that the digital disc future is coming, but what are we giving up in exchange? And one of those things is your ability, or possibly the ability, to resell a product, or recoup that, or give it to a friend,
Or swap it with a friend for one of his
and
games.
I think that will, hopefully that's something that will solve itself over time, kind of like the Kindle. There should be something built in, given that like DLC, you can't do a trial. You can't, like, there has to be ways, at least on Xbox Live, everything is mandated to have a demo, whether it's arcade, whether, you have a way of trying it in some capacity so that you're not totally getting hoodwinked if you had a chance to check it out.
Yeah.
But I think there will be probably an uprising against not being, if we're going completely that direction, you're going to have to give us a little back in terms of what we do with the content.
Should we be looking to Steam to sort of set the precedent for that? Or?
That would be interesting.
I mean, that's what I've had the same conversation about Steam with a lot of people. Is that it'd be great if you could resell this somewhere down the line.
Well, you can gift games to people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like there's an obliviousness to somehow you sort of sharing, even though really it's more like it's buying that. I think that is a safety valve right there.
Oh, sure, but that's not alleviating people's. There's still the people that are. I don't care. I want money back.
Yeah.
I mean, you could really, just arbitrarily create a used market on Steam by if you bought your license, Steam, ties it to your account. Well, it'll break the license, but you can sell it to a friend, $10 less or something like that. Even something as simple as that, I think would placate a lot of people.
And you're making a profit if you bought it during the holiday sale.
Now, we have a wonderful hypothetical here. Sterling, do you believe that there's great open minds that are running the major publishers out there that are going to, see fit to actually allow for something almost like a flea market, in terms of games?
I'm not particularly optimistic about it. Just in general, I feel like the way things are set up right now in the online structure, Steam could set the way, but as long as Microsoft can't figure out how to give us more than 100 friends, and as long as they can't drop the ban hammer on people for acting like God knows what, they're not going to really get their act together. And I think with publishers, there's such an impetus on them to profit from DLC, from add-on content, and that even ties back into what somebody from EA was saying this week.
Yeah, they were predicting that maybe you could see the $60 point not become the standard in the next couple of years.
As long as you're making more money off of your DLC.
Yeah, you sell it at $30, but sell it with $30 in downloadable content. You sell more of the $30 one.
I love that idea. I think if you can lower that entry point and just then dole out purchases over time, really it's going to be good because people are going to take more chances in terms of some of the games they're playing.
And also they are actually pretty decent with dropping the ban hammer. As somebody who has people banned a lot.
Oh, are they?
I hate glitches.
Yes, you are like a hardware store. The way that you hand out.
I am nasty when I play because I can't stand. I don't like people screwing up my game.
And good for you. Well, that was our reader question of the week from Yami Karasu. Obviously, we're going to have another one next week. I want to always encourage our viewers, readers, to send in questions and stuff that's pertinent to stuff going on in your head that may also hopefully have something to do with what's happening in the game industry at the same time. That is all the time we have this week for feedback. Sterling, thank you so much for joining us. Abby, Patrick, we'll see some of you back here next week. We hope to see all of you. Go tell a friend so there's actually more people because I love company. It makes me less insecure. Until then, thank you.